Hey, what's up, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Switch version of Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age for the Nintendo Switch. The Zodiac Age version is also available on the PS4 and Xbox One, and I believe PC and Steam. And basically, this is an enhanced version of the PS2 Classic, but for this review we're going to be taking a look at the Nintendo Switch version. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage, I'll have a link in the description of this video. Now, when it comes to Final Fantasy games though, I'm not the biggest fan out there, but there are two Final Fantasy games that stick out to me the most that I think are my personal favorites. The first one, of course, is Final Fantasy X, or Final Fantasy X, depending on how you want to say it though. And of course, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. I remember playing this game back when it came out originally in 2006. This was at a time when the PS2 was coming towards the end, and we were going into the PS3. And the game really didn't get a whole lot of attention from what I understand, that it should have gotten, mostly because it was released near the tail end of the PS2 era though. And it was a couple years ago that the game eventually also saw a re-release on the PS4, and I got a chance to try it out, and I enjoyed the game more than I originally did back in 2006. I remember doing a review of the game a long time ago though. So it came to my surprise last year when Square Enix announced that they were bringing a couple of Final Fantasy games over to the Nintendo Switch. Some of them were basically Final Fantasy 9 and Final Fantasy 7, basically the PlayStation version to be exact, although some of them are saying that's the mobile version that they ported over to Final Fantasy X and X2, and of course Final Fantasy 12. And now that I got a chance to play it on the Nintendo Switch, to me, I still think not only it is as enjoyable as it was when the Zodiac Age was released back on the PS4, but it still remains one of my favorite Final Fantasy games of all time. So why don't we get started with the pros and the cons, and we'll start off first with the pros. The first one has to be the story. This is probably one of the biggest draws to Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. The story in here gives off a little bit of a Star Wars vibe out of it, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, Vaughn in a way reminds me, is almost kind of like Luke Skywalker in a way. Barthar, if I'm saying the name correctly, I apologize if I'm not, it's kind of like Han Solo, and Thrawn is like, and I know this is going to sound odd to some people, it's like basically a excuse me, a sexy version of Chewbacca in a way though. But the whole world and the way it's designed, you just definitely get a little bit of a Star Wars vibe out of it. Plus it also focuses on several different characters, not like one central character in a way. So story wise, it's still good. The next thing I do want to talk about is the graphics and art style in the game. Now, granted, this game came out back in 2006, so visuals have changed since then, though. That said, the visuals and the art style still hold up. I like the designs of the characters to the world around it in general, so the visuals and the art style still holds up to this day, even in 2019. I mean, yes, it may not be 4K if you're playing on the Nintendo Switch or anything like that, but it still looks good. And last but not least is the combat. Best way I can describe it to those who are going to play it on the Nintendo Switch is that if you played Xenoblade Chronicles, you're kind of going to get a little vibe out of this. Basically, you don't there isn't like any random battles, or if you like touch an enemy, you go into like a battle mode or anything. Like, everything is done basically in real time, similar to how Xenoblade Chronicles is. And in some ways, you can kind of command what your party does though via the gambit system and all, where you could tell them which is like a top priority. Like, maybe you want to have them heal as a top priority and then attack any enemies, to be exact, to basically and that's how basically sort of similar to how the gambit system is. But it's, like I said, it's very similar to Xenoblade Chronicles in a way. It's all real time and all. And I actually like it. I like this kind of combat style in the game. Not that I hate turn-based or anything like that. I still think Final Fantasy X's turn-based is good at all. But this approach, the more like the Xenoblade Chronicles approach or the vibe of it, is definitely the right approach. Definitely the approach I like in this game. Another thing is that the game also has different classes where you can have your characters like do like you got one as a white mage and all that stuff to heal and everything. And every time you defeat an enemy, you earn certain points, and you can use those to unlock, say, more gambit slots, to basically spells, to using certain weapons and certain armor. I'm going to get to that in the cons as well. So, but overall, I will say the combat in the game is fun. And for Nintendo fans, if you played Xenoblade Chronicles, you're going to get a Xenoblade Chronicles vibe out of this as far as combat go in a way. It's not exactly like Xenoblade Chronicles, but it's very similar to a certain degree. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to get to part 2, and that is the cons. So we'll take a little bit of a break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of our video review of, let me get that out, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age for the Nintendo Switch. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are 3 cons I have for Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. We'll start with the first one. Now, as I mentioned, I told you how I enjoy the combat. I think it's fun. You do get a Xenoblade Chronicles vibe out of it, which certainly isn't a bad thing. But it kind of does get take some getting used to in a way, though. It can be a little bit difficult to understand the combat. So it and the gambit system as well, though. I mean, once you start understanding some of the stuff, it's going to click very well. But I found it took a little while to understand the gambit and the combat system. It took a little while when I played the original game back in 2006. It took a little while when I played the PS4 version, and same thing with the Switch version, though. Although a little bit better this time now that I'm playing it on the Switch, but still, the combat and again gambit system does take some getting used to. The next thing I do want to talk about is the classes and sort of how they have it set up in Final Fantasy XII, though. Now, as I mentioned, though, every time you defeat an enemy, though, you'll earn certain points, and you use those points for your character depending on which class you pick, and you can use that to unlock, say, like weapons, armor, spells, accessories, gambits, add additional gambit systems and all that stuff, which is fine and all, though. I mean, it doesn't ruin the game or anything like that. I'm just not a big fan of the decision that they tied accessories, weapons, and armor to basically towards the classes, though. So let's say, for example, if there's a weapon you want to buy for your character, you won't be able to get it because either A, you haven't unlocked that weapon on their classes, or B, you pick the wrong classes for your character and you have to switch to a different one in order to unlock or for that character to use that weapon. I do believe you can change your classes for each character if you're not comfortable with them, which is fine. I mean, you could do that if you want to, and I do believe the Switch and Xbox One version you can have up to 3 different classes for one character and all. So, I mean, again, the whole classes system in Final Fantasy XII, it's not terrible, it's not awful. I just don't like the idea of weapons and accessories and armor being in the classes. So I just prefer, the old-fashioned way of, if you want to buy a weapon and armor to a character and see if it puts the right stats or anything like that, you could do that. I still just prefer the old-fashioned way than how it's done in Final Fantasy XII. It doesn't ruin the game. It does take some getting used to. I'm just not a big fan of that decision. And last but not least, I do want to talk about the frame rate on the Nintendo Switch version. Now, it is worth pointing out that based on my time with the game, though, the frame rate runs fine, though. regardless of whether you're playing in portable or dock mode, I didn't have really any issue with the frame rate. It runs at a good 30 frames per second, though, and that certainly isn't a bad thing. That said, though, while the Switch version runs at 30 frames per second, the Xbox One X version basically runs at a 60 frames per second, though. Now, granted, it's not a huge deal. This isn't a graphically demanding game or anything like that, so it doesn't really bother me as much. That said, I would have loved to see this game run at 60 frames per second on the Nintendo Switch, whether it's in portable, whether it's in console or handheld mode. That would have been nice, though. Does it ruin the game? No, it still runs well on the Nintendo Switch, even at 30 frames per second, though. But I won't deny the fact that it would have been nice to see it run at 60 frames per second, though. Overall, though, Final Fantasy XII, in my opinion, is a classic. It is the art style, the story in the game looks great, and the combat, like I said before, for those who like Xenoblade Chronicles combat, will definitely like the combat in Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, though. It does take some getting used to, though. Like I said, I enjoy I don't hate the class system. I think it's fun. It's just that there are some decisions I don't agree with, like tying accessories, armors, and weapons in the class system. And of course, the Switch version running at 30 frames per second compared to the Xbox One X version that runs at 60 frames per second. But again, that's a little bit of nitpicking and doesn't ruin the game or anything like that. The game runs well on the Nintendo Switch, and it runs well whether it's portable or dock. And this is and for the Switch, though, these are the kind of games that can really benefit from the Nintendo Switch. Adventures, RPGs, these kind of games, though. And Final Fantasy XII definitely is one of my personal favorite Final Fantasy games of all time, along with Final Fantasy X, though. So if you're looking for a good RPG to play on the Nintendo Switch, I would definitely let me see if I get it. I would definitely recommend Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac game. It was fun when I played it on the PS4, and it's certainly fun playing on the Nintendo Switch, especially given the fact that you could especially the way the Switch is designed as a portable console or a console handheld hybrid, in which you could take it on the go. So overall, it's definitely a recommendation, and if you're a big fan of RPGs or anything like that, I definitely would recommend Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. As far as which version to pick up, that's going to depend on your system of choice. If your main system of choice is the PS4 or the Xbox One or the PC, then go with that system. But if your Switch is the main system of choice and you like the idea of bringing Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, on the go, then I definitely would say go with the Switch version. If you're okay with the fact that the game runs at 30 frames per second, which, like I said, doesn't bother me that much. But regardless of which system you own or which is your system of choice, though, I definitely recommend Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. Okay, this concludes this video review of Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age for the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age? Is this a game worth picking up on the Nintendo Switch? Is it worth picking up on the Xbox One X, or are you happy with the version you had, whether it was the original PS2 or the PS4 or the PC or Steam version, though? Did you enjoy the story? Do you think this story has a Star Wars vibe to it, though? Do you enjoy the combat? Do you think the combat has a Xenoblade Chronicles vibe to it, though? Are you okay with the Switch version running at 30 frames per second compared to, let's say, like the Xbox One X, which has it run at 60 frames per second? Is that a big deal for you? Is it not a big deal for you? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off on the comment section below. Let me know what you think, and I hope you hit that like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You could do it through PayPal Me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, wish you all a good day then. Bye!